Nice to be back, ladies and gentlemen. Hi, where are you from?
This episode of TCG Cast is sponsored by AlchemistRefuge.shop, your one-stop website for TCG singles, sealed product, supplies, and more. You can help support TCG Cast as well as a local business by shopping at Alchemist Refuge. And make sure to use the code TCGCast at checkout for 5% off of everything you purchase from AlchemistRefuge.shop.
Hello, Aladdin. Nice to have you on the show. Can we call you Al or maybe just Din? Or how about Laddie? Sounds like here, boy. Come on, Laddie.
Life is your restaurant. Life is your restaurant. Life is your restaurant. Life is your...
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to Season 2 of TCG Cast. We are coming back from a nice break where I got engaged, Greg crushed a bunch of tournaments, and the rest of the team is living their lives with family, friends, and doing all kinds of wonderful things. So we are so glad to be back. It's going to be a lot of fun talking about Lorcana because there is a brand new set about to hit store shelves, and that is Ursula's Return. And oh man, there's a lot of really fun things we're going to discuss. But Greg, how are you doing, my man?
Yo, it's good to be back. And yeah, it's been a bit, as you've alluded to at the start of the episode. But yeah, I mean, like, I definitely felt it. I definitely missed not going back, rushing back home from locals on Sunday night to record more episodes of TCG Cast. So yeah, if you thought we were gone, think again, because yeah, we're back at it with Season 2 of TCG Cast, so stay tuned.
Yeah. So we are going to continue the show. We are going to go back to our bi-weekly recording, so every other week there will be a podcast. If there's a special event, special news, we will cover that, but as of right now, we're going to go back to our roots where we record every other week, so we can spend time with our family, our friends, and play in tournaments. And that is going to be the first topic we're going to discuss this week. And that is, Greg, you played at a bunch of events and you did very well. You got some stitches and your play mats. So congratulations. How do you feel coming off of, 4 major events, practicing and performing very well?
Man, I'll just have to say this first and foremost. As someone who's kind of been a locals Andy throughout the majority of his life, I just like buying cards and playing locally, and I've always had this kind of aphorism throughout my life where I kind of just went like, I would rather spend the money that it would take to go to major events and just buy more cards and then play at more local game stores, right? And so I've always just kind of been playing at local game stores. But when it comes to like these bigger events, and I don't want to oversell it too much and be like, oh my gosh, it's a completely different experience. But I mean, really, it's a longer event. It really feels different. Better players are coming in from different cities, towns, maybe even states. I don't know how far people have really traveled for one of these things. But if you were someone who crossed state lines to play in a set championship, let us know. We'd love to hear your story and, how that kind of came about. But, really, it's a bigger event. You're going to be playing more rounds than you would at a typical local. Most locals cut after the 4th round or maybe even 5th if it's a bigger local. And, really, it's just... make sure you keep your mental stamina up, and playing through the entire day is kind of the name of the game with the set championships. And I'm sure that many trading card game players that jumped in with Lorcana kind of felt that for the first time during these past few weeks. But man, I'm very happy with my experience at playing the set championships. I played in a total of 4 events throughout, the 2 weeks in Central Florida, which is where I live. And the final stash, I guess, at the end of it was 2 promo Stitch Rockstars and then 1 runner-up playmat. So I got 4th in my second event that I played, and then 2nd in my 4th event that I played. And yeah, that's it was a great couple weeks, and I'm proud to be an owner of one of those Stitches. And yeah, I'd be down to talk about more.
Yeah, congratulations on your hard work. So tell us a little bit about the decks you used to take 4th and 2nd.
Yeah, so I'm sure it would come as a surprise to basically no one, the decks I decided to bring to bring those finishes on those events. The first one, or the second one that I played, but the first one that I actually got a Stitch, I played Emerald Amethyst. So it's a deck list that you'll see probably a lot online, maybe if you play at locals, things like that. But essentially, it's a tempo deck that focuses on playing your big Sorcerer's Stone, like animal package, bounce package, so like snakes, rabbits, foxes, goats, all that good stuff. And then it combines the power of the two Ursula cards that we saw at Into the Inklands, Ursula Deceiver and Ursula Deceiver of All. So Deceiver of All, I believe, is the 3-cost one that double sings a song. And then Deceiver of All rips a song out of the opponent's hand while you're able to look at it. So essentially the deck just kind of tries to go for a tempo game plan, ripping their resources out when it matters, being able to get double resources off of your songs when the timing's right. And then outside of that, it basically almost always ends the game on some sort of goat loop shenanigan that we've become all too used to when playing Lorcana so far. But yeah, that was my first event that I did pretty well at. Actually, a couple of my games were caught on live stream, so if you guys want to check the Versus Games YouTube channel in Oviedo, Florida, that's where I played and got my 4th place win. So I was on the camera. The camera loved me. It was 3 matches, so if you want to see some gameplay with Emerald Amethyst, and perhaps even beating one of its tougher matchups, and maybe I guess you can get some insight on how to beat the Steel Song matchup with this deck. Yeah, go ahead and check those out. Yours truly is on the camera during those, and yeah, that we had commentators and everything for that event, so the production value is relatively high on those.
All right, and what was the second deck that you used to take second place?
Cool. So the second deck that I played is Red Blue Control, also known as Popsicle, also known as, I don't know, Be Prepared Ramp. Back in the day, I like to call it Ruby Ramp. I wish that name stuck. I love Ruby Ramp so much because it's like alliteration, and like it's Ruby, which is the color, and then Ramp, which is obviously the Sapphire shell, because like most of your Sapphire cards are going to be ramping you. I love that name. Let's bring it back, Lorcana Nation, whatever. Like, start a movement, start a Twitter hashtag, whatever. But essentially, I basically took Savage's list and then modified it a little bit, and then just played that. But yeah, it worked very well. This might be a little bit controversial. I hate that the deck exists within the game. You know, not to be too negative or whatever, but one thing that's really interesting about that style of play is that you kind of do nothing for the first few turns. You ramp up, you set up, and then you continue to kind of do nothing where you just like remove their characters on a case-by-case basis. And then out of nowhere at the end of the game, you like have gained a grand total of 8 lore or whatever just from having characters stick on the board. And then you do this big lucky dime combo where like you play a Bell Strange but special and get 5 lore, or you play a Tomato and you get 5 lore, and then, you know, against decks that don't have item removal, it's kind of inevitable, and against decks that do, the games just go really long. And so, you know, I don't love the style of deck, but I am the kind of player that just acknowledges that it is probably the best deck, and it was a deck that probably gave me the biggest chances of taking home a Stitch Mat and promo card. And it turned out that was true. You know, it got me to a second place finish, and I lost to, ironically, the deck that I used to get the 4th place finish at the previous regional, or the previous one that we talked about here on the podcast, and that was Emerald Amethyst. So, yeah, those are the 2 decks. I'm sure no one's really surprised by those picks, but, you know, obviously they are performing very well, and you know, the proof is in the pudding, right? 4th and 2nd place finish at 2 set championships.
Yeah, those are really good turn of events. You know, you put your time in, you play 2 different decks with 2 high performances, which is good. So the next big thing I want to talk to you about is people who are getting ready for their events or their locals coming out of set championships. What's some piece of advice or a thought that you can share so that, you know, people can improve their game plan? Because not everyone came away with a Stitch promo or a Stitch Mat, and it's a good learning opportunity to take what you know and what you have, test it out, and then come away hopefully learning and growing as a player. And, you know, people who are performing well, I love to hear their thoughts, because every single person has a different perspective on how to improve your gameplay and how to perform better in your next local event or your next set championship, or even if you're going to one of the bigger events coming up over the summer. So what are some thoughts you want to share with people who are listening right now? Yeah,
I think first and foremost, I think it's just important to talk about, I mean, don't beat yourself up over it, you know, if you don't do well, especially if it's one of your first major tournaments for card games. You know, I've been playing trading card games for like competitively since 2012, so around 12 years, and then even like semi-competitively when I played Pokemon back when I was in elementary school in like the early 2010s era, things like that. And so like I've been playing these games for a long time. I've a storied history with it, if you will, and like a lot of these skills that you can learn in Lorcana are transferable from many other card games that I play. I was really big into Hearthstone. When you think about it, there's a lot similar to Lorcana and Hearthstone. And that's actually why we've seen some Hearthstone players like Savage start playing Lorcana as well, because like those skills are transferable. And so, I think a lot of trading card game veterans kind of come out, out of the gate swinging at Lorcana because, they just kind of have those transferable skills. So like, one, don't beat yourself up, and like we all got to start somewhere. I kid you not. And I'm not sure if you've ever had this feeling, Sugi, but like there were times when I was, younger and like everyone else in the room, it felt like everyone else was adults and they played card games for longer than I. Like I would get like nervous just playing the game, like nerves would really get the best of me, especially when I was a kid or like young teenager playing these card games. And so like, I mean, it's just great to see incremental improvement over time and like just being able to look at where you were versus where you are now. And so like, if you think about it, if these set championships did not go too well for you, you'll probably think back about it, a couple of years from now when you've gotten a lot better at the game or more experienced with the game. It'll be like, man, well, that we all got to start somewhere, and that's where I first started. In terms of the gameplay experience itself, I just really can't stress this enough. Even if you think you have a correct play or a line that you want to go down, just like take a quick second, look at the cards in your hand, look at the board one more time. As long as you aren't like taking forever to like what would be considered slow play in these major events, but as long as you're performing game actions in a reasonable amount of time, there's nothing wrong with just reevaluating your board state and board presence. And so, yeah, when it comes to playing the game itself, that's, I guess, my major piece of advice as well. If you're dead set on a line, just reconsider one more time, and then it turns out it might be the right line that you wanted to play to begin with, but it's always good just to double check, because at these style of events, if you play a card down or you say that you want to play a card, you generally can't take it back unless your opponent is really nice about it. So, yeah, I think that's my biggest piece of advice.
Okay. Those are really good pieces of advice. Be patient and don't beat yourself up. It's very true. A lot of players, new, old, sometimes are just very hard on themselves about making a mistake. And I've played tournaments where I cost myself a win, which cost me getting into the top cut, which cost me getting prizes. And I do agree. The best thing you can do is learn from that mistake. Don't do it again. And just improve from there. Because at that point, there's nothing you can do. You can't go back in time. Don't beat yourself up. It's just a game. And, have fun as you're playing through. Because if you're not having fun, might not be the most enjoyable experience, considering you're playing a game.
Yeah, it's a
which
game.
Is supposed to be fun.
It's meant to be played.
Yeah.
It's meant to be fun. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, don't necessarily get too wrapped up in, winning. Winning's not always everything. But now that you've played through the set champs, which was set 1, 2, and 3, we are moving forward into set 4, which has a couple of interesting new mechanics I want to touch on. And those would be sing together with a number. So sing together 8, sing together 6, yada, yada. And then a new way to pay a shift cost. So let's talk about Sing Together first. So there's a bunch of songs that have been revealed, and they have Sing Together plus a number. And the card says any number of your or your teammates' characters with total cost X or more may exert to sing the song for free. So not only can you multi-sing, so if you have something that says Sing Together 8, you can exert, 4 characters with cost of 2 or a 5 and a 3 or whatever combination. But you can also do it with teammates, which would infer team play, aka like, two-headed giant or, however they're going to, incorporate this.
Or the new Ursula's box set that we have revealed.
Or the new Ursula's box set.
Yeah.
Yep. So what do you think about Sing Together? Do you think it's going to be something we might actually see as a viable form of play? Or do you feel like this might be more of a multiplayer box set kind of thing where you're playing it with like, your spouse, your partner, your friends, your kids, more of a casual style effect?
Yeah, I love this idea and concept. I love like the teamwork aspect of it. I think Ursula's Return will be a wonderful way to experience Lorcana, kind of bring back those Disney villainous vibes, of a previous Ravensburger experience. And I love that's in the game. That being said, in terms of like competitive, I guess, weight that we put on Sing Together, right now I'm not 100% convinced. In trading card games, we often talk about this concept of like win more. In order to sing together, you're probably going to need a board state of, maybe 2 singer characters, or if they aren't singer characters, it's going to have to be 3, maybe even 4 characters, right? And so if you think about it from like an opportunity cost or like what you give up in order to do the sing together thing, you're giving up lore, you're giving up potential challenges you could have done, maybe even challenges against like great locations the opponent has on field and things like that. And so I think it really just depends on, how easily we can get things out. I know that recently we got spoilers for new high value singers. Like we now have a 4 ink 3/3/2 lore Ariel that counts as singer 7. So perhaps like there could be good combos with Sing Together and things like that. I think the designers are really smart to, I guess, observe here that Sing Together cards are mostly not inkable. And so really it just puts a pressure, I guess, in terms of having to play the card. Because most of the time you aren't going to cast it for its ink cost straight up. You're going to want to sing it. But I'm looking at some of these cards right here. We got Under the Sea, that's 8 cost Sing Together. Second Star to the right, 10 cost Sing Together uninkable. The Mob Song, 10 cost uninkable, things like that.
Yeah. So like something I wanted to bring up, you kind of hit it on the nail. You're having to expend 2 or more characters to sing a singular card. Mm-hmm. So like you said, I could quest with these 2, 3, or 4 characters, or I can play this very expensive. So Second Star to the Right is the one that I wanted to bring up. It is a 10 ink, non-inkable card. So you can sing together any number of characters with 10 or more, blah, blah, blah. The effect, once it's paid for, is chosen player draws 5 cards versus A Whole New World from set 1, where it costs 5 and everyone dumps their hand and draws 7. Mm-hmm. So and A Whole New World was incredibly disruptive where it was. So now you have a card that costs double, and you would probably choose yourself to draw 5. So you're paying more ink or singing with more characters to draw less cards. Now you don't dump your hand, so that is a boon, but is it equatable? Is this better than A Whole New World, or would you rather play A Whole New World?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I obviously 100% would choose A Whole New World. I've talked with some friends about, I guess, quote-unquote problematic cards in the game, and I think that, Whole New World kind of fits within that mold. The big upside, I guess, to A Whole New World is that you, as the Steel Song player or as the Amber Steel player, is that you set yourself up to use all your resources to like get your hand size really low. So an Amber Steel that looks like playing a Lantern, playing multiple 1-drops, playing an Aerial, singing Whole New World, and so at that point you have like 5 things on board, 0 cards in hand. Like you make sure that you ink before you Whole New World, so like you don't even have to spend the card in hand to get your resource for the turn. And it's also disruptive where it discards the opponent's post-mulligan hand as well, And so, Whole New World obviously is one of the best cards in the game. Second Star to the Right, I think, could be okay. I think it's still debated or up in the air whether or not Ursula, 3-drop from Into the Inklands, helps these things sing twice. But, I mean, based on the wording, it says whenever Ursula sings a song, you get to copy it, so Ursula is singing the song, so I would assume that this would be doubled up, but that kind of thing I feel like is going to be like kind of like the Jafar wheel combo, or as we saw in set 3 spoiler season, where we see the cards, we go, oh my gosh, this would be crazy, and then you realize that Ursula is a 3 cost, and you would need to combine it with potentially several more characters in order to get the song off twice. So yeah, so far I'm not super impressed with Sing Together, but I think it's mainly a thing that's made for this new multiplayer Ursula experience, and I think it's just going to be so fun whenever your teammate has enough characters on board to then sing a Second Star to the Right and give the player who needs the most help 5 cards. Yeah. It kind of brings in that like collaborative, cooperative, like MMO experience with like you start dungeoning in World of Warcraft with some friends, or like something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was the other side of the coin I wanted to bring up, because a lot of people listening and who are on social media generally prepare for competitive events, competitive local events, tournaments, of so on and so forth. But I think it's important to remember that a larger majority of players are actually casual. They play at home, they play with family, they play with friends. They're just wanting to have a good time. And now that we have a cooperative box where you and a bunch of other people can play together, I feel like these cards may not have a competitive draw, but they have so much fun where you and your team can work together to pay a high cost to have a pretty powerful effect, especially if it says you and your teammates. So like if I play, could you imagine multiple people using Ursula on their board? So it's like you have an Ursula, I have an Ursula, James has an Ursula. So that's 9. And then, somebody uses somebody else. So now it's like, are you copying this 3 times? Probably. So does that mean, 15, what is that? 10, 20, that's 30 cards being drawn. That's pretty fun. Is it going to win a game? Who knows? But I think you hit the nail on the spot. This is not a competitive card. Second star to the right. But boy, it looks like a lot of fun if you're playing together with a teammate. I really do think this is going to be a lot of fun to see sing together, function with team compositions.
Yeah, I just think that it's just going to be so fun to experience the game in a different way. And, Magic's done this for years. Things like Plane Chase, where you can make any format Plane Chase, or like Commander, things like that. Obviously,
yes, I love Plane Chase.
The typical examples that you'd hear, when it comes to Magic, and just like, finding alternative ways to experience the game is going to be awesome. I'm excited to just play the Ursula's Return set out of the box, just as like a, winding down. It's a Friday night. Let's, have a house party, drink some apple juice or whatever it is, and just play some. Yeah. Play some of the, I don't know exactly what they called it, but the Ursula collaborative box set. I think it's just going to be a blast.
Yeah.
And it's something I hope that Ravensburger continues to release expansion sets. Like, I hope that this product does well. I hope that they kind of hear or like see the sales figures on their end and adjust accordingly, where they go, wow, this is something that has demand. It's something that people love playing as like a, an experience. And then, for Lorcana veterans that own the box set, you can always slot the cards that you get in it into a deck. And like, it has multi-purpose, it's multifunction. You can get new players into the game by just, pitching the game like a board game. It's like, oh, we played Splendor tonight, but how about we try playing Lorcana, Ursula's Return,
Yeah.
And, it's a really good gateway to get, non-trading card game players into the game. And, obviously I think it kind of fits Ravensburger's mission statement to a T, like they want to inspire communities, they want to create great games that people can enjoy. And then obviously they want to keep people involved within the Lorcana ecosystem or market, right? So where people can buy new product and they remember playing Lorcana. It was a really great experience. They had a great house party with it. And, maybe they want to see what the rest of the game has to offer. And I think Ravensburger is doing a really great job. I'm pumping myself up over this release, but I think it's going to be awesome. I think it's going to be really fun.
Yeah, I'm going to try and see if my fiance will play it, and we'll have some fun, hopefully. The next thing I want to talk about is the new shift mechanic. So for those who don't know, shift initially was you can overlay a card of the same name. So if you have like a Ariel that costs 1 ink, you could shift into a higher cost Ariel, so say a 5 cost Ariel, by paying a cost. So maybe you pay 2 ink to shift up to a 5 cost. So in like Pokemon terms, it'd be evolving. You're going from a smaller, weaker thing to a bigger, stronger thing. So traditionally, you had to pay a specific ink cost. In the new set, there are alternate costs where you can shift by discarding a type of card. So Aladdin can discard a location card, Olaf can discard an item card, so on and so forth. So I'd love to kind of poke your brain, Greg, as to your thoughts on a old mechanic using a new cost. Do you think It's good. And if you want, you can pick out some cards you think might see play, some cards that are interesting. But I think this is an interesting take where we've gone from, it used to be a singular mechanic of if you want to shift, you must pay ink. Now you can shift by discarding cards in your hand, which means you can discard dead cards or you can discard cards that may not have practical application. So for example, like with Olaf, you can shift by discarding an item. So maybe you have a uninkable item you can't play, but you want to get this Olaf online, boom, I can get rid of a resource that's not useful to play a character that is useful. So share your thoughts on this, please.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting alternative cost. Of course, you're no longer spending the ink on it. It's a bit tougher from the perspective of you having to discard a card, because when you think about it, you play the regular version of the card, and you play the shifts version of the card. Even when you had to pay ink for that, that was actually a pretty big cost, right? Because you had to play the regular version, then shift onto it. I think, the main thing that you had to worry about back then is that, you're 2 for 1 in yourself, basically, where you have to commit 2 cards in order to play 1 card at the end of the day. But what you got for it was tempo, because the card retains the properties of the original, so you would be able to challenge your quest with it the turn it came into play. But also what you're giving up, or what you're gaining off of it, is that you get to pay the cost of the card for, 2 less of its regular cost if you just played it, And so, like, those are some advantages of Shift. But, of course, the downside is that you had to commit the 2 cards. With this new way of paying for the Shift cost, you also have to commit a 3rd card. And so, I think this is helpful in decks that are able to get a lot of cards, particularly Amethyst or Steel. That has whole new world combos where, committing a lot of cards very early on. I think long term it becomes a bit more challenging because you then have to worry about maintaining long term advantage. Like, does the tempo you get from playing this new shift cost outweigh, the tempo that you would otherwise get if you just played other cards? That's still yet to be known, but nevertheless, I'm just I'm appreciative that Ravensburger is experimenting with the types of mechanics that are already there. This is a new take on shift, a new take on singing. We don't necessarily see a new quote-unquote mechanic per se, but they're expanding upon already existing mechanics. And I think that's going to be really interesting to see where, deck archetypes and strategies can lie from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you on that. It's interesting to see. Well, so I guess I should go backwards. There have been a lot of people who have, how do I put this gently? They've claimed that Lorcana is a kid's game and the mechanics are just really simple and there's not much depth or complexity compared to, say, Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh, where you have, timing and player interaction and triggers and stacks and all kinds of different keywords. So Lorcana is not that kind of game. It never was. It's very much more like Pokemon. You play your turn, you do what you want, and you have to be very aware of combo plays because Pokemon has a lot of searching, a lot of combos, a lot of effects when you play a Pokemon or evolve a Pokemon or bench a Pokemon, do a thing, and then, so on and so forth. So I feel like Lorcana falls into the combo-centric kind of game where you have to spend time building your deck, and then you have to spend time practicing, and then you have to spend time learning your combo lines because you always want to have like a primary engine and then like a secondary engine in Yu-Gi-Oh terms. So if you can't hit your primary combo, you at least have a backup so you're not just dead in the water and totally bricked up. So seeing Lorcana and the design team willing to expand upon a mechanic with new costs and alternative ways to, for example, singing songs, you used to only be able to sing a song with one thing. Now you can sing a song with multiple things. That's interesting. Not necessarily with the current reveals competitively powerful, but they've begun to reveal that, hey, we have already taken into consideration multi-singing, which I think we talked about a year ago, that we could see cards that allow you to do that. Because in my head, if they have sing together on a card, I would not be surprised if we see characters that say, if this card sings along with another card, you get like +1 or +2 to your singing value.
Right, particularly with like cards or like characters that play like a supporting role, like Sebastian for The Little Mermaid, for example. I think that could be really fun.
So that was the thing I thought about, was we've seen support where you can boost a teammate's attack power. I would not be surprised if we see a sing support where it's like, if I sing and you sing, you have like Lumiere and Cogsworth, like a combo
of course.
From, an IP. So you could see those two sing a song. Well, if they sing together, then they each get like +1 to their singing cost. Or if you have like Belle and the Beast or Elsa and Anna, stuff that makes sense. You could see combo plays where by themselves they're not as good, but together they, maybe get +2. Or, if these two cards sing together, they can sing cards, equal to 10 or less, whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting place where we're seeing the songs have a cooperative function. And I think we could see characters that have a cooperative function.
Big prediction coming up, right? Imagine Anna and Hans singing Love is an Open Door, but once they complete the sing together, Hans deals 1 damage to Anna. Interesting synergy. That would be backstabber Hans, right?
Yeah.
That would be funny, right?
I could see
it's
that.
like those sort of little things. It's like part of the reason why we got interested in Lorcana in the first place. So like they're able to put quite a lot of flavor within these characters and properties that we know so much. So just like, seeing the open door, no pun intended, of these, I guess, different ideas, right, of flavor that can add to the game also adds a great level of enjoyment to the game that we already know and love so well.
I agree. The other thought behind shift with alternative costs. So right now we see discard a type of card to shift this up. I think that's interesting. Some of these cards may potentially see some play. Diablo, the legendary rare, possibly, very, very much a question mark. But the thing that intrigues me the most as someone who likes to see preemptive mechanics, so this is a preview of what could come, I think we could see shift with other mechanics, like maybe spending lore, maybe opponents drawing cards, maybe other things happen where right now, like you said, discarding cards from your hand is a very steep cost. Cards are come at a premium in Lorcana, and playing a shift card at the cost of, you have to play the first card to set it up, then you have to play the shift card, then you have to discard another card. You're paying 3 cards for one character. So that character needs to really provide something beefy. Otherwise, you're expending a lot of resources for not much return. So whether these current cards are good or not, we'll see what happens. But the intrigue is that the design team is willing to use alternate resources within the game to pay costs. And that gets me excited because lore is a cost, characters are cost, cards in your hand are cost, ink is a cost, giving your opponent things is a cost. So you could say, hey, shift, your opponent gains 1 lore, but you get to play this character. Ooh, interesting. So you're helping your opponent get closer to winning, but you're gaining as almost resource value, almost a free shift upgrade. So hopefully that character can do something powerful so you don't lose the game, because you don't want to, lose by 19 points plus that 1 you gave to your opponent. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see what costs might be provided. Any listeners, and Greg, I would love to hear thoughts on what do you think we could see Ravensburger use as an alternate cost for shift? Like, outside of discarding a card and paying ink, what's another thing you think we might see in a future set that they could do to spice things up? I mean, it's all speculative, but everything's on the table. What do you think, man?
I think self-mill would be interesting. Or suppose that instead of the discard pile, there's actually like a remove from play zone, so you can't do Tamatoa or salvage shenanigans. But imagine if the shift cost is self-mill, remove from play, and then at the start, at your opponent's set step, you have to mill some more cards. But in exchange, the card is actually very powerful. It's going to help you win the game, but you're kind of put on a clock, right? You're no longer put on the clock of, your opponent's lore. You're actually put on a clock against your own character, right? I think that would be really interesting design space for them to look into for sure.
Yeah, that would. It'd be, in Magic terms, like a cumulative upkeep where at the start of every turn you have to pay this cost or the character is banished. That's actually a really interesting thought. I do like
Thank
that.
you. I came up with that on the spot, so hopefully you liked my improv skills.
No,
today.
that's good. I do. But the thing is, you're right. That card really needs to present a game altering state, because if it's just, hey, mill 2 cards off the top of your deck, and it's like a 3/3 for 5, and all it does is, I don't know, maybe it has like evasive or something. That's just not good enough. It's
Right.
really not. It's got to be something spicy.
And there's also something like it can run into the opposite problem where, like, you know, if the card's way too good, it's like, well, you know, Lorcana decks are 60 cards. Let's say I mill 20 on the shift and then mill 4 on each following turn. The card's just so powerful that the game would be long over by the time that the self mill actually matters too. And so, like, I mean, honestly, if there's a team that I would trust to balance that right, it would be Steve Warner and friends. So, you know, keep up the great work. But yeah, I guess that's our declarative challenge to you guys. If any of you end up listening, yeah, try to make that work and somehow make it balanced. And Godspeed, right? Like, Godspeed.
Yeah, pretty much. All right. Well, that is the end of this week's episode. We will be back in 2 weeks. But Greg, any last thoughts you want to share with our listeners?
Next set championships, even if you do well at the first event, don't play blue steel for the second one. That's my third set championship that I played, and I got absolutely destroyed by playing a deck I didn't really practice with. So, yeah, no, I'm anti blue steel from now on. That was tough.
Oh, man. All right. Well, before we get on out of here, we just want to let everybody know we are back. We're going to be doing shows every other week. We'll bring guests on. We're going to talk about Lorcana, Star Wars Unlimited, Pokemon, the new Union Cross Arena coming out with all the anime decks.
So excited for that.
This is a great year for trading card games, and we are Trading Card Game Cast, and we're gonna talk about all kinds of card games. So if there's a specific topic you want us to touch on, please hit us up on social media and let us know. Also, let us know what kind of alternate resource costs you want to see the Lorcana team work on, because singing together I think is cool. Alternate shifting is cool. I still want to see ways that you can use lore as a cost. I've always thought that lore is a resource that could be managed in a way where you pay it as a cost to get some really explosive plays. And I'm very curious to see if we'll ever see that in a future design. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please make sure to follow us on social media. You can find us on YouTube and Twitter. And we will see everyone in 2 weeks. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next show. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of TCG Cast. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media at TCG Cast on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And if you're looking to pick up a brand new set of trading card game singles or accessories, go check out our sponsor, alchemistrefuge.shop. This is where we pick up all of our supplies, and we highly recommend you should too. Thanks for joining us on this week's episode. We'll see everybody next time. And remember, play games and have fun.